This was not an easy thing to do. We never had a manual on how to do a gay organization, either locally, state, or federal. And it was a lot of trial and error. Log Cabin started in '77. Why? At that point in time, there were no political gay organizations in this country. Thanks to a very bigoted state senator in California, whose name was John Briggs from Orange County, he decided that he was going to put on the ballot in California an initiative that said, we will not allow any gays to be teachers in our school system. Well, that's how it started, because the gay people of the state said, sorry, but we're not going to allow this. So the Democrats formed their club, and us Republicans formed our club, and we fought that initiative. The important thing that occurred is the polls were showing that this proposition was going to win, until it was Log Cabin that worked with the Ronald Reagan people. And about 2 weeks before the election, Ronald Reagan went on TV and said, I would never support this kind of a proposition. This is bigoted. That was it. Polls turned. The initiative was defeated. That was the beginning of Log Cabin in California. Now, it wasn't called Log Cabin. It was called Lincoln Club. But in California, we have, in the Republican Party, an organization called the Lincoln Club, which raises money in the Republican Party. So we were asked by the county Republican chair if we would change our name, because there was a confusion. And so we wanted to stay with Lincoln. And the decision was made, well, let's try Log Cabin.
The fact of the matter is most Republicans didn't recognize there were gay people in their party. And so by putting a face on being gay or lesbian in the party was a really critically important thing to do. And somebody had to do it, and there were a lot of people willing to stand up and do
that. We kept working at it and finally got agreement among the 4 clubs to at least get together to discuss an organization.
The problem we had was San Francisco was under Concerned Republicans for Individual Rights, and they were very fond of that name. The rest of us in the southern part were all Log Cabin. So we couldn't come up with Log Cabin that would satisfy everybody at the time, but then sometime later we agreed that we would go under the name of Log Cabin Republicans of California, and then as a slogan underneath under the letterhead, Concerned Republicans for Individual Rights. So that was the compromise.
It actually came out of the March on Washington. A number of the gay Republican clubs met during that weekend or that period of time and decided to attempt to form a national confederation of local clubs who were using all different types of names at that time. Those efforts culminated in the formation of a confederation under the name of UREP, United Republicans for Equality and Privacy.
When we finally tried to put a group together, 4 out of the 5 officers died of AIDS within a year and a half. And we had to start from scratch again. So it was really a really tough periods of time, and then we were trying to financially keep things going.
By that time, UREP had fallen apart because it was a very loose federation, and the people in the leadership of that, many of them had passed away due to AIDS.
Over the course of our membership from 1982 until 1992, we lost 30 members. That would have been enough, and including 20 people who had served at one time or another as an officer or a member of our board. And you could have had 2 or 3 log cabin chapters with that type of leadership that we lost. We did a white paper actually back in 1983, somewhere in my archives, which was sent to every legislator and to the governor's staff really before anything had been done on AIDS. There hadn't been any funding on it, there hadn't been any legislation, and we were really, we were the pioneers.
There were small little Republican clubs in the rest of the country. They were kind of afraid because California had over 1,000 members, big bucks, very organized, and we were trying to get them going, and they were saying, oh, well, you guys will take us all over. And so we sort of like try to nurture them.
They wanted to set up a Washington headquarters for the political action, lobbying, so to speak. And so the question was, how was the grassroots going to merge or meld with what's happening in Washington, and how to get everything working together? It was a difficult procedure.
And then it became clear in the early 90s, particularly after the 92 convention, that it was important to have a presence in Washington to work at the federal level as opposed to the state level.
We went to Washington and we struggled for 3 years and didn't really make any progress. But then they met in Tampa, Florida, and that's when Rich Taffel came on the scene as a fresh young face from Massachusetts.
I think one of the big things was each club in the country had their own name. Mm-hmm. Like in Dallas it was Metroplex. In Chicago their initials were Cargo. And so you had all these different, and it was like, look guys, if we're going to do this, you got to all have one name. So that was a real hurdle because people didn't want to give up these names. But then when they began to say, hey, you know, when you talk to a politician and you just say, I'm with Log Cabin, boing, bell rings. And so we finally got everybody to join Log Cabin. That was a key point.
Rich Taffel, when he came on board, really did a lot to bring an organization together and get it organized. Once there was a executive director in Washington, D.C., then there were changes made to the organization of the Log Cabin Federation that made it less of a federation, more of a national organization, of which what we have today.
There's 2 things I've always tried to emphasize to the young log cabin people. Always. 1, always keep your dignity. Dignity is important because to the average person, they want somebody that they look to with respect. When the opposition, no matter how bad they get, and how mean they get, and how vile they get, when they go below the sewer line, maintain your dignity. And the second part of it is, always make sure that Republican candidates, Republican legislators, Republican leaders, always can say one thing about log cabin people: we trust them. When you have your dignity and you have trust, you're going to win when the final war is over.
So the struggle has been long, worthwhile. It continues. I would like to see us one day no longer have to be involved at all in a gay organization. But until that fight is over, we'll be here.